President Minho Park was drinking his morning coffee when the world changed forever. The hot liquid burned his tongue as alarms started screaming through the presidential palace in Seoul. His security chief, Tae-hyun Choi, burst through the office. Doors without knocking, something he had never done in 15 years of service. "Sir, we have a problem," Tae-hyun said, his face pale as winter snow. "A big problem." Minho set down his cup and looked at the man who had saved his life 3 times during the border conflicts. If Tae-hyun was scared, then everyone should be scared. "Show me," Minho said. They walked quickly through the halls where portraits of past presidents watched them with serious eyes. In the war room, dozens of screens showed images that made no sense. Strange objects hung in space above Earth, gleaming like silver tears against the black sky. They were huge, bigger than cities, and they had not been there yesterday. "They appeared 6 hours ago," said Dr. Yuna Song, the head of Earth's space program. Her usually neat hair was messy, and her clothes looked like she had slept in them. "All at once, in perfect formation around our planet. We tried to contact them, but they contacted us first." She pressed a button, and the room filled with a voice that sounded like wind through broken glass. The words were in perfect Korean, which somehow made it more frightening. "Greetings to the species called human. You will send your leader to face judgment before the Galactic Council. Your people have broken sacred laws. Your ships have entered forbidden space. Your colonies violate ancient treaties you never signed, but must obey. Send your leader, or we will come and take him." The message ended, and the room fell silent. Minho looked around at his advisors, seeing fear in their eyes. These were people who had fought wars, survived disasters, and led a planet through its worst times. Now they looked like children who had been caught stealing candy. "How long do we have?" Minho asked. 3 days, Yuna said. "They want you to board one of their ships. They gave us coordinates." General Woo Jin Nam, the head of Earth's military, stepped forward. His uniform was covered with medals from conflicts most people preferred to forget. "Sir, this could be a trap. We know nothing about these aliens. They could kill you or worse." Minho nodded slowly. He had been president for 8 years, and every decision had been hard. But this was different. This was not about trade deals or border disputes. This was about the survival of everyone he had sworn to protect. "What do we know about our people?" they mentioned, he asked. Yuna pulled up another screen showing the faces of 2 young officers, Captain Ji-ho Kim of the exploration ship New Seoul and Commander Yoonji Lee of the colony ship Busan's Hope. They were exploring the Kepler system when we lost contact 2 months ago. We thought it was equipment failure. Captain Kim had kind eyes and a smile that reminded Minho of his own son. Commander Lee looked determined, like someone who would never give up even when facing impossible odds. Now they were prisoners of aliens nobody knew existed. "These aliens," Minho said, "they speak our language. They know our names and our ship designs. They have been watching us for a long time." "That is what worries me," Tae-hyun said. "If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already. Instead, they want to put you on trial." "Why?" Dr. Song pulled up star charts showing human colonies spread across nearby systems. Red marks showed where alien territory supposedly began. "Look at this. According to their message, we have been expanding into space they claim belongs to them. But we never saw any signs of alien life in those systems." "Because they did not want us to see them," Minho said. "They were testing us, watching how we behave when we think we are alone." The president walked to the window overlooking Seoul. The city sprawled below him, millions of people going about their daily lives. Children played in parks while their parents worked in offices and factories. None of them knew that aliens were deciding their future in ships hanging above their heads. "Sir," General Nam said, "let me go instead, or send a diplomat. You are too important to risk." Minho turned back to face his team. These people had dedicated their lives to serving humanity. Now he had to ask them to trust him with the most important decision in human history. "No," he said. "They asked for our leader. If I send someone else, it shows weakness. It shows we are afraid." "We should be afraid," Taehyun said. "They have technology we cannot understand, ships that appeared from nowhere, the ability to translate our languages perfectly. They could have weapons that make our nuclear missiles look like firecrackers." Yuna leaned forward in her chair. "Actually, sir, that might not be true. I have been studying the energy readings from their ships. They are advanced, yes, but not as advanced as they want us to think. Some of their technology seems familiar, like they took human ideas and improved them." This was interesting news. Minho had learned long ago that bullies often appeared stronger than they really were. Maybe these aliens were the same. "What about our own ships?" he asked General Nam. "How many do we have that could fight if necessary?" Nam looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we have the defense fleet around Earth and Mars, maybe 50 ships that could be considered warships. The aliens have hundreds of ships, and those are just the ones we can see." Minho nodded. The numbers were not good, but numbers were not everything. Throughout history, smaller forces had defeated larger ones through courage, intelligence, and luck. Korea itself had survived by being smarter than its enemies. "I am going," Minho announced. "Dr. Song, you will come with me. If these aliens want to judge humanity, they should meet someone who understands what makes us special." Yuna looked surprised. "Sir, I am honored, but I am a scientist, not a diplomat." "Exactly," Minho said. "Diplomats tell people what they want to hear. Scientists tell them the truth. I think these aliens have heard enough lies from other species they have conquered." The word conquered hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Nobody had said it before, but everyone was thinking it. These aliens did not sound like explorers or traders. They sounded like conquerors who were used to getting their way. 3 days, Minho said. "General Nam, prepare the fleet but keep it hidden. If this goes badly, I want them to think we are helpless until the moment we are not. Taehyun, contact the other world leaders. They need to know what is happening. Dr. Song, gather everything we know about these aliens and their technology." As his team left to carry out their orders, Minho remained at the window. The alien ships were invisible from here, but he could feel them watching. Somewhere up there, Captain Kim and Commander Lee were waiting for rescue. Somewhere up there, aliens were deciding whether humanity deserved to exist. Minho had spent his life making hard choices. Now he faced the hardest choice of all. In 3 days, he would board an alien ship and represent every human who had ever lived. He would speak for the farmers and soldiers, the artists and engineers, the dreamers and builders who had turned a small planet into the birthplace of a spacefaring civilization. The aliens thought they were summoning a primitive leader to accept judgment. Instead, they were about to meet humanity. The alien ship was nothing like the movies had imagined. President Minho Park expected gleaming metal corridors and blinking lights, but instead found himself walking through passages that looked carved from black stone. Strange symbols glowed, faintly on the walls, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Dr. Yuna Song walked beside him, her scientific equipment scanning everything they passed. "The gravity is slightly heavier than Earth," she whispered, "and the air has more oxygen than we need. They are trying to make us comfortable." Minho nodded but said nothing. Their alien escorts were tall creatures covered in what looked like living metal armor. They moved without sound, their faces hidden behind smooth masks that reflected the glowing symbols. These were not the first aliens they had seen since boarding the ship. There had been others, creatures that looked like walking trees, beings made of crystal, and something that might have been a cloud of intelligent gas. "How many species are part of this council?" Minho asked their escort. The creature turned its masked head toward him. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, as if the walls themselves were talking. 237 species serve the Galactic Council. You would make 238 if you prove worthy of survival. The words sent ice through Minho's veins. If they proved worthy of survival, this was not a trial to determine guilt or innocence. This was a test to see if humanity deserved to continue existing. They emerged into a vast chamber that made Minho's breath catch in his throat. The space was so large he could not see the far walls, and the ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Thousands of creatures filled tiered seating that rose like the inside of a giant bowl. At the center, a pillar of light reached from floor to ceiling, and floating within it was something that hurt to look at directly. "The council speaker," their escort said. "Morthek the Eternal has presided over galactic law for 7,000 of your years." As they walked toward the center of the chamber, Minho tried to understand what he was seeing. The creatures in the seats were unlike anything from Earth's imagination. Some were clearly mechanical, others seemed to be made of pure energy. A few looked almost human, but wrong in ways that made his skin crawl. All of them were staring at him and Dr. Song with expressions he could not read. "They are afraid," Yuna said quietly. Minho looked at her in surprise. "What makes you think that?" "Body language is universal among intelligent species," she replied. "Look at how they position themselves. Even the strange ones show signs of tension. They are not sure what to expect from us." This was valuable information. If these aliens were uncertain, then humanity had more power in this situation than it appeared. Minho straightened his shoulders and walked toward the pillar of light with the confidence he had learned during years of political battles. The being called Morthek spoke, and its voice filled the chamber like thunder rolling across mountains. "Human leader Minho Park, you stand accused of crimes against galactic order. Your species has violated the sacred boundaries that maintain peace among the stars." "What boundaries?" Minho asked. "We saw no signs, received no warnings. How can we violate laws we never knew existed?" A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled aliens. Morthek's form shifted within the pillar, becoming more solid and defined. It looked like a statue made of living crystal, beautiful and terrible at the same time. "Ignorance is not a defense," Morthek said. "When a species achieves faster than light travel, it becomes subject to galactic law whether it knows of our existence or not. You have built colonies on worlds that belong to older, wiser species. You have constructed military installations in neutral space. Worst of all, you have done this without seeking permission from those who rule the galaxy." Dr. Song stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Excuse me, but how were we supposed to seek permission from people we did not know existed? And who decided that these older species own entire solar systems they do not even use?" Another ripple passed through the chamber, but this one felt different. Hostile. Several aliens made sounds that needed no translation. They were angry at being questioned. "The young species speaks out of turn," said a new voice. This one came from something that looked like a giant insect wearing ceremonial robes. "The Galactic Council was established to prevent the chaos that occurs when primitive species expand without guidance. We have maintained order for millennia." Minho felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. "Order," he repeated. "You mean control. You decide who gets to explore, who gets to build colonies, who gets to grow as a species." "Exactly," Morthek said, and there was satisfaction in its crystalline voice. "Newer species lack the wisdom to use space responsibly. They must be guided by those who came before them. This is the natural way of things." "Natural according to who?" Yuna asked. She had pulled out a small device and was scanning the chamber. "I am reading energy signatures that suggest this entire station is built using technology from dozens of different species. Did you guide them to share their knowledge, or did you take it? The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Creatures roared, screeched, and made noises that had no equivalent in human language. Morthek raised what might have been a hand, and silence fell like a physical weight. Dr. Song raises interesting questions, Minho said, his voice carrying, clearly through the vast space. If this council maintains order through guidance, why are our people being held prisoner? Captain Ji-Ho Kim and Commander Yoonji Lee were exploring peacefully when they disappeared. That sounds less like guidance and more like kidnapping. They entered Velthari space without permission, the insect creature said. The Velthari Empire is one of our oldest and most respected members. Your people ignored their territorial claims. What territorial claims? Minho demanded. We found no inhabited worlds, no stations, no signs of any species using those systems. If the Velthari own that space, where are they? For the first time since entering the chamber, Minho sensed uncertainty among the council members. Glances were exchanged between different species, and he could feel tension building like the pressure before a thunderstorm. Morthek's form became brighter within its pillar of light. The Velthari prefer to remain unseen until their territory is threatened. This is their right as a senior species. So they own space they do not use, do not inhabit, and do not mark as their own, Yuna said. How is that different from claiming to own the entire galaxy? Because we allow it, Morthek replied, and now its voice carried a note of warning. The Galactic Council determines the rights of all species. We have decided that humanity has grown too quickly and spread too far. You will withdraw your colonies to your home system and accept guidance from a senior species. Minho felt the trap closing around humanity like the jaws of some cosmic predator. This had never been a trial in any meaningful sense. The Council had already decided humanity's fate before he arrived. They wanted him here to accept their judgment and make the surrender official. And if we refuse? He asked. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the ambient sounds of the massive station seemed to fade away. Thousands of alien eyes focused on the small human who dared to question galactic authority. Refusal is not an option, Morthek said. Species that reject council authority are considered threats to galactic stability. They are dealt with accordingly. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Minho looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 237 species and suddenly understood the true nature of this galactic civilization. This was not a council of equals working together for mutual benefit. This was an empire disguised as a democracy, where the oldest and strongest species made the rules and everyone else obeyed or died. I need time to consider your offer, Minho said carefully. It is not an offer, the insect creature said. It is the judgment of the council. You will accept our decision and return to your people with instructions for compliance. Dr. Song was still scanning with her device, and something in her expression caught Minho's attention. She had discovered something important. Actually, Minho said, buying time while he tried to read Yuna's signals, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We came here expecting to negotiate as equals. Instead, we find ourselves in what appears to be a surrender ceremony, Yadaif. Our learning wisdom, Morthek said. Accept your place in the galactic order, and your species may survive to serve a greater purpose. The word serve echoed through the chamber like a curse. Minho Park, who had spent his life fighting for Korean independence and human dignity, felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. These aliens expected humanity to become slaves, and they thought the humans would be grateful for the opportunity. They had made a serious mistake. President Minho Park stood in the center of the vast alien chamber and felt the weight of human history on his shoulders. 237 species watched him with eyes that expected submission. They had seen this scene played out countless times before when younger species learned their place in the galactic order. What they had not seen was a species like humanity. We reject your authority, Minho said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Creatures that had been still as statues suddenly moved, creating a wave of motion through the tiered seating. Sounds erupted from a dozen different species, expressions of shock and outrage that needed no translation. "We reject your judgment," Minho continued, his voice growing stronger. "We reject your system, and we reject your demand for submission." Morthek the Eternal blazed brighter within its pillar of light, the crystalline being's form shifting rapidly between different configurations. "You do not understand the consequences of defiance. Your species numbers in the billions, but you are alone against the combined might of the galaxy." Dr. Yuna Song stepped forward, her scanning device now openly visible in her hands. "Actually, we understand more than you think. For example, we know you have been monitoring our communications since first contact. We know about your surveillance network throughout human space. And we know this is not the first time you have had this conversation." She activated a holographic display that showed images from the Council's own databases. Dozens of species appeared in the projection, each one shown at the moment they accepted galactic authority. Their leaders all wore the same expression of defeated resignation. The Kethvar people, forced to abandon their colonies after 40 years of expansion. The Zorian Federation, required to destroy their military fleet and accept Velthari oversight. The Michelin Republic, dissolved entirely, and its population distributed among older species as workers. Yuna's voice was steady as she recited the list of conquered civilizations. "You have done this before." The chamber was no longer filled with shocked silence. Now there was something else in the air, something that felt like the moment before an avalanche when the first rocks begin to fall. "Those species learned wisdom," the insect creature said, but its voice lacked the certainty it had held before. "They accepted their proper place and found peace under our guidance." "Peace," Minho repeated. "Is that what you call it when the Kethvar mining colonies produce resources they will never see again? Is that peace when Zorian children are educated in Velthari schools to forget their own history?" More images appeared in Yuna's projection, showing the reality behind the Council's version of galactic order. Species reduced to servitude, their cultures slowly erased, their independence forgotten. It was a pattern repeated across centuries, a machine for converting free civilizations into obedient components of a greater system. Morthek's voice became sharp as broken crystal. "How do you have access to sealed council records?" Yuna smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Because humanity does not wait for permission to learn what we need to know. While you were watching our colonies and counting our ships, we were watching you. We have been inside your databases since the second day of first contact." The reaction from the assembled aliens was immediate and violent. Creatures rose from their seats, weapons appeared from nowhere, and the chamber, filled with aggressive sounds that made the walls vibrate. Through it all, Minho and Yuna stood calmly at the center, as if they were discussing the weather instead of declaring war on galactic civilization. "Impossible," Morthek said. "Our systems are protected by quantum encryption that no younger species can break." "You are right," Yuna agreed. "We could not break your encryption, so instead we convinced your computers that we were you. Human artificial intelligence does not think the way alien artificial intelligence thinks. Your security systems were designed to keep out alien minds, not human ones." Back on Earth, General Taehyun Choi was watching the transmission from the council chamber with a mixture of pride and terror. Everything was going according to plan, but the plan was insane. He activated his communication device and sent a single coded message to Admiral Wu Jin Nam. "Steel Wind is authorized. Throughout the solar system, human ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields and behind planetary shields began to move. The Earth Defense Fleet was much larger than any alien database indicated because humanity had learned long ago to keep secrets from those who wanted to control them." In the council chamber, Minho was still speaking. We also know about your client species system, how you maintain control by keeping younger species dependent on older ones for technology and resources, how you prevent anyone from developing weapons or defenses that might threaten your authority. The system maintains stability, Morthek insisted, but its voice was no longer commanding. It sounded defensive, almost pleading. Without our guidance, species destroy themselves through warfare and competition. Maybe some do, Minho admitted. But that is their choice to make. You have no right to decide for them. Captain Jiho Kim had been watching the proceedings from a holding cell deep within the council station. The young officer had spent 2 months in captivity, but he had not been idle. Human engineers were trained to understand any system they encountered, and alien technology was just another puzzle to solve. When the lights in his cell suddenly flickered and the door slid open, he was not surprised. "About time," he said to Commander Yoonji Lee, who appeared in the doorway carrying alien weapons they had acquired during their escape. "I was starting to think the boss forgot about us." "Never," Yoonji replied. "President Park does not abandon his people. Now let's go show these aliens what humans do when someone takes our friends." Back in the main chamber, the confrontation was reaching its climax. Alien security forces had surrounded Minho and Yuna, but they had not moved to arrest them yet. Something was holding them back, some uncertainty that had not been there at the beginning of the trial. "You speak of choice and freedom," Morthek said, "but your species has only existed in space for a few decades. You know nothing of the responsibilities that come with power." "Then teach us," Minho said. "Work with us as equals instead of trying to conquer us. Share knowledge freely instead of using it as a tool for control. Help us become better without demanding that we become slaves." "Impossible," the insect creature said. "The younger species must serve the older ones. This is the foundation of galactic civilization." "No," Dr. Song said, and her voice carried new authority. "This is the foundation of galactic tyranny. You have built an empire and called it peace. You have created slavery and called it guidance. But you made one critical mistake." She gestured toward the projection, which now showed real-time images from throughout human space. Alien fleets that had been approaching human colonies were suddenly engaged in battle with ships that should not have existed. The humans had been preparing for this moment since first contact, and their hidden fleet was larger and more advanced than any intelligence had suggested. "You assumed we would be like the others," Minho said. "You thought we would accept judgment from beings we had never met, surrender our freedom to creatures we had never chosen to follow. But humanity has spent its entire history fighting against exactly this kind of oppression." The chamber erupted into chaos as news of the space battles reached the council members. Species that had not fought independent wars in centuries suddenly found themselves dealing with military situations they did not understand. Their coordination systems were failing, their communication networks were compromised, and their supposedly invincible fleets were taking casualties against human forces that should have been impossible to defeat. Morthek's form was shifting, rapidly now, cycling through different configurations as if the being could not decide what shape to take. "This is madness. You will destroy yourselves and take the galaxy with you." "Maybe," Minho admitted, "but that will be our choice, not yours. And I think you will find that humans are very hard to destroy." Alarms began sounding throughout the council station as reports arrived of human forces attacking key installations across multiple star systems. The carefully maintained order that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was cracking apart, and the cracks were spreading faster than anyone could repair them. "You have doomed your species," Morthek said, but now its voice sounded more like a lament than a threat. "The Council will not allow this rebellion to succeed." President Minho Park looked up at the ancient being that had ruled the galaxy since before humans learned to use fire. And he smiled with the confidence of someone who had never learned how to surrender. "The Council," he said, "is about to discover What happens when you try to cage something that was born to be free? Admiral Wu Jin Nam had fought in 3 wars before the aliens came, but nothing had prepared him for this. His flagship Soul's Pride hung in space above the Kepler system, surrounded by a fleet that officially did not exist. For 6 months, humanity had been building warships in secret, hidden in asteroid mines and concealed shipyards that no alien satellite had detected. "Sir, we have confirmation from the Council Station," his communications officer reported. "President Park has given the signal. Operation Steel Wind is now active." Wu Jin nodded and opened a channel to his entire fleet. "This is Admiral Nam to all ships. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species in the galaxy that has been forced to bow to alien masters. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our freedom." The first battle of the Human Council War began at Kepler Station, where a Velthari dreadnought the size of a small moon was preparing to bombard human colonies. The aliens expected to face desperate resistance from primitive ships using inferior technology. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. Commander Seojin Park, the president's daughter, led the first attack. Her fighter squadron approached the massive alien vessel using tactics that no galactic military had ever encountered. Human pilots were trained to think independently, to adapt to changing situations, to turn disadvantages into advantages through creativity and courage. "Remember your training," she told her pilots as they approached the dreadnought. "These aliens have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They do not know how to handle something new." The human fighters scattered in seemingly random directions, confusing the alien defense systems that were designed to track formation flying. When they attacked, it was from angles the dreadnought's designers had never considered possible. Human weapons, modified with captured alien technology, cut through shields that had protected Velthari ships for millennia. But the real surprise came when the alien commanders tried to coordinate their response. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo Lee had spent months studying captured alien communication systems, looking for weaknesses that human technology could exploit. What he found was better than any weapon. Their entire command structure depends on instant communication across multiple star systems, he explained to Admiral Nam via secure channel. They have never had to fight a war where they could not talk to each other. Human hackers, working with artificial intelligence systems that thought in ways no alien could predict, began systematically disrupting the quantum networks that held the galactic fleet together. Ships that had operated as a unified force for centuries suddenly found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate attacks or share tactical information. The battle for Kepler Station lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Velthari dreadnought was a burning wreck, and human colonies throughout the system remained free. More importantly, news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy faster than the Council could suppress it. Dr. Seoyeon Choi, General Choi's sister and Earth's leading expert on alien psychology, was monitoring communications from dozens of species across the galaxy. What she discovered changed everything. "They are talking," she reported to the War Council on Earth. "Species that have been silent for centuries are suddenly asking questions about the battle. They want to know how humans defeated a Velthari dreadnought. More importantly, they want to know if it can be done again." The answer came at the Battle of Proxima Gate, where human forces faced a combined fleet from 7 different Council species. Admiral Nam had divided his forces, sending smaller groups to attack multiple targets simultaneously. The aliens used to fighting single large battles with overwhelming force, found themselves trying to respond to threats that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Captain Do-Hyun Kang led a special operations team aboard the Council Station where President Park was still being held. Human soldiers, trained in the harsh conditions of Earth and adapted to fighting in any environment, moved through alien corridors like shadows made of steel and determination. These passages were designed for species that do not think about warfare the way we do. Kang explained to his team. They have security systems, but no real defenses. They never expected anyone to fight their way inside. The rescue mission became a running battle through the heart of galactic government. Human soldiers equipped with alien weapons they had, modified for their own use, fought creatures that had never faced opponents who refused to accept defeat. By the time they reached the main chamber, half the council station was in chaos. President Minho Park was still standing in the center of the chamber when the sounds of battle reached the assembled aliens. Morthek the Eternal was no longer glowing. With confident authority, the crystalline being seemed dimmer now, as if the light that powered it was failing. "Your people are destroying everything we have built," Morthek said, and for the first time its voice sounded almost human in its despair. "We are freeing everything you have enslaved," Minho replied, "and we are just getting started." Dr. Yuna Song had been using the chaos to access more of the Council's databases. What she found confirmed humanity's worst suspicions about galactic civilization. "Minho, you need to see this. The Council has files on over 1,000 species that have been completely destroyed. Not conquered or absorbed, but eliminated entirely because they refused to submit." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled aliens. Many of the council members had never known about the extinct species, believing that all encounters with younger civilizations ended in peaceful integration. The truth was far darker than even the humans had suspected. 1,000 species, Minho said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. 1,000 civilizations wiped out because they wanted to remain free. And you call this system peace? Some of the aliens in the chamber began to move, not toward the humans, but away from the council speakers who had hidden this genocide from their own members. Dr. Song's projections showed the evidence clearly, and there was no denying what the records contained. The insect creature that had spoken for the Velthari Empire was backing away from Morthek, its ceremonial robes rustling with distress. "We were told they chose to abandon space travel. We were told they returned to their homeworlds voluntarily." "You were told lies," Yuna said. "Just like every other species in this chamber, the Council's inner circle has been using all of you to maintain their power while eliminating anyone who threatened their authority." Captain Kim and Commander Lee arrived in the chamber just as the political situation reached its breaking point. The two human officers had fought their way through alien security forces and gathered valuable intelligence about Council military capabilities. What they had learned would change the course of the war. "Sir," Captain Kim reported to President Park, "the Council's fleet is not as unified as they pretend. Most species contribute ships, but maintain separate command structures. If we can convince even a few species to withdraw support, their entire military advantage disappears." This was the opportunity Minho had been hoping for. He turned to address the assembled aliens directly, speaking not to the Council leadership, but to the representatives of species that had been lied to for centuries. "You have a choice," he told them. "Continue supporting a system built on genocide and slavery, or join us in creating something better. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be free to explore it." The response was immediate and dramatic. Representatives from dozens of species began leaving their seats, walking out of the chamber in protest against the Council's actions. Others remained but began demanding answers from Morthek and the other ancient beings who had controlled Galactic's policy for millennia. Admiral Nam's voice crackled through the communication system as reports arrived from battlefields across the galaxy. "Sir, we are receiving surrender requests from 17 different species. Their fleets are withdrawing from combat and requesting negotiations with human representatives." The galactic order that had seemed eternal was crumbling in real time. Species that had been clients and servants for thousands of years were suddenly remembering what it felt like to make their own decisions. The council chamber, which had been a symbol of unity and authority, became a scene of chaos as the foundation of galactic civilization collapsed. Morthek's form was flickering now, The ancient being struggling to maintain coherence as its carefully constructed empire fell apart. You do not understand what you have done. Without the Council's guidance, the galaxy will descend into chaos. Species will destroy each other in wars that will last for millennia. President Park looked up at the failing ancient being and felt something that might have been pity. Maybe some will fight. Maybe some will make mistakes. But that is what freedom means. The right to succeed or fail based on your own choices, not someone else's permission. The war was far from over, but already the galaxy was changing. For the first time in thousands of years, younger species were making decisions for themselves. And at the center of it all, humanity stood ready to fight for a simple principle that had driven them across the stars. The idea that no one had the right to tell another species how to live. 6 months after the first shots were fired at Kepler Station, President Minho Park stood before a very different galactic assembly. The massive council chamber had been rebuilt, its oppressive architecture replaced with something that felt more like a meeting place than a throne room. Representatives from over 100 species filled the seats, but now they sat as equals rather than subjects waiting for judgment from their betters. The war had ended not with humanity's victory over the Council, but with the Council's collapse from within. When species across the galaxy learned the truth about their supposedly benevolent leadership, the rebellion spread faster than any military force could contain it. Ancient empires that had ruled for millennia found themselves facing uprisings on every world, as populations that had forgotten how to be free suddenly remembered. The Free Species Alliance recognizes the independence and sovereignty of all member worlds, Minho announced to the assembly. No species shall rule over another. No civilization shall be forced to accept the authority of beings they did not choose to follow. Beside him, Premier Jiwon Han of the newly liberated Kethvar people nodded in agreement. The Kethvar had been one of the first species to join humanity's rebellion, and their knowledge of Council technology had proven invaluable during the war. Now they stood as proof that species could recover from generations of oppression and reclaim their independence. Dr. Yuna Song, now serving as the Alliance's first director of Xenocultural Affairs, presented her report on the reconstruction efforts. We have identified 47 species that were completely suppressed under Council rule. Their languages were forbidden, their histories rewritten, their technologies confiscated. The process of cultural restoration will take decades, but they are eager to begin. The human victory had come at a terrible cost. Earth's outer colonies had been devastated during the Council's final desperate attacks. Mars City was still being rebuilt after a Velthari bombardment that killed 2 million people. The defense of Luna Station had required sacrifices that would be remembered for generations. But humanity had not fought alone. As the truth about the Council spread, species across the galaxy had risen up against their oppressors. The Mishlan people, supposedly dissolved and scattered, revealed that they had maintained secret communities throughout the galaxy. The Zorion Federation reformed overnight when their suppressed military officers emerged from hiding. Even some of the ancient species that had originally supported the Council turned against their former allies when they learned about the 1,000 extinct civilizations. Admiral Wu Jin Nam, now serving as Supreme Commander of the Alliance Defense Force, gave his military report. Council resistance has ceased in all but the most remote systems. The Velthari Empire officially surrendered last week when their home-world population voted to overthrow their own government. Most of their former client species are requesting membership in the Alliance. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Species that had been enemies for months were now working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. It was not perfect, and there were still conflicts and disagreements, but they were the kind of problems that free people could solve together. Captain Ji-Ho Kim, promoted to admiral after his heroic actions during the war, oversaw the integration of former Council forces into the Alliance fleet. Many alien officers had defected during the fighting, bringing valuable intelligence and advanced technology with them. The process of combining different military traditions into a unified defense force was challenging, but it was producing innovations that surprised everyone involved. Human tactical thinking combined with Kethvar engineering and Michelin sensors has created ship designs more advanced than anything the Council ever built, Admiral Kim reported. We are not just rebuilding the galaxy's military forces. We are making them better. Dr. Seoyeon Choi had been working with former Council species to understand the psychological impact of their liberation. Her research revealed something that gave hope for the future of galactic civilization. Species that have been free for only a few months are already showing increased innovation and creativity, she explained to the assembly. Generations of suppression did not destroy their ability to think independently. It was just dormant, waiting for the opportunity to emerge. Ambassador Min Jae-yoon, humanity's chief diplomatic representative, was negotiating the complex process of establishing trade relationships between species that had never been allowed to interact directly. Under Council rule, all commerce had been controlled by the ancient species, with younger civilizations serving as sources of raw materials and labor. Now they were learning to work together as partners. Free trade between equals produces wealth that benefits everyone, Ambassador Yoon explained. The Council system concentrated resources in the hands of a few ancient species while keeping everyone else dependent on their generosity. Our system distributes prosperity more widely and creates incentives for innovation and cooperation. But the greatest change was not in politics or economics. It was in the spirit of galactic civilization itself. For the first time in thousands of years, young species were exploring new worlds, developing new technologies, creating new forms of art and culture. The galaxy was alive with possibility in a way it had not been since before the Council's rise to power. President Park walked to the great window that looked out over the rebuilt station. Ships from dozens of different species moved through space in patterns that would have been impossible under the old system. Humans worked alongside former enemies, sharing knowledge and resources to build a better future for everyone. We have accomplished something remarkable, he said to Premier Han, who had joined him at the window. But this is just the beginning. There are entire regions of the galaxy that we have never explored, species we have never met, possibilities we have never imagined. Ji-Wan Han smiled, an expression that looked strange on a face that had known only servitude until 6 months ago. The Kethvar have legends about the time before the Council, when our people traveled freely among the stars and discovered wonders beyond counting. Perhaps those legends can become reality again. The moment of peaceful reflection was interrupted by an urgent communication from the edge of Alliance space. Commander Young-ho Kim of the deep space exploration vessel Incheon appeared on the main display, his expression serious. Mr. President, we have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from outside our galaxy. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, but the formation and approach vectors suggest hostile intent. The assembly hall fell silent as the implications became clear. The Andromeda Galaxy, humanity's nearest neighbor, was home to civilizations older and more advanced than anything in their own galaxy. If those civilizations had decided that the Alliance posed a threat, the war that had just ended might seem like a minor skirmish compared to what was coming. Size and composition of the approaching fleet? Admiral Nam asked. Over 10,000 ships, sir. Some of them are larger than anything the Council ever built. They will reach our outer systems in approximately 30 days. President Park felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions settling on his shoulders. Humanity had just finished one war for freedom and independence. Now it appeared they might have to fight another one against enemies that made the Galactic Council look primitive by comparison. Have they attempted to communicate? He asked. Yes, sir. The message was brief and came in multiple languages, including perfect Korean. They want to discuss what they call our aggressive behavior and unauthorized interference in galactic affairs. Premier Han stepped forward, her newly liberated people already facing another threat to their freedom. It seems we have attracted the attention of an even older empire, one that views our rebellion against the Council as a threat to their own authority. President Park nodded slowly. The alliance had won its independence through courage, intelligence, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds. Now they faced an even greater challenge, but they would meet it the same way they had met every other obstacle in their path. He turned to address the assembly, seeing determination in the faces of representatives from 100 different worlds. These people had tasted freedom and would not give it up without a fight, no matter what forces arrived from the darkness between galaxies. "Signal Commander Kim," he said. "Tell him to send this message to the approaching fleet. The Free Species Alliance welcomes peaceful contact with any civilization that respects our independence. However, we will not submit to judgment from beings we did not choose to follow, regardless of their age or power." He paused, thinking of all the species that had been destroyed rather than submit to alien authority, all the civilizations that had fought and died for the right to determine their own destiny. "And Commander Kim," he added, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never learned how to surrender, "prepare the fleet for battle. If these newcomers want to discuss our aggressive behavior, we are ready to show them exactly how aggressive free people can be." The galaxy had been transformed by humanity's refusal to accept slavery disguised as guidance.